Welcome to Pass the Mic. It's Friday, March 21st, first day of spring, right?
It is. I
Yes.
guess so. Yeah.
Wouldn't it be? Okay. All right.
2025.
2025. I'm Mike Gervasi, and with me is as always, my guest host. Today I'm introducing Ren Dog. This is for you, Mike Piotti. Mike, what's going on?
Hello, everyone. Hello. Episode 155.
I said that, didn't I?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Elizabeth Pate is our Elizabeth, did I say it?
I don't remember.
Okay. All right. Well, I may have, maybe not. We'll find out soon
You're
enough.
good.
So our guest today is a regular listener. She's been mentioned many times. We know Antoine doesn't want that smoke because it's Elizabeth Pate.
Hi,
So
Antoine. Hi.
Elizabeth Pate, how are you, Elizabeth?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
We're good. We're good.
You
Mike, go
want to
ahead. I'm sorry.
first of all, if you're watching this on our Spotify feed and possibly our YouTube channel, this is the first episode where someone is using a car as a studio. President Musk's car company, uh, Tesla
Right.
Motors, is also a good podcasting studio, and that's where Elizabeth is recording today. Why don't you just give us a little welcome and bio about yourself before we get into? I mean, we'll learn a lot more. Well, first of all, regular listeners probably know quite a bit already, but
Yeah.
now we're going to get to know the real you, and as the episode goes
Okay.
on, we'll learn a lot more. But a little quick bio to start this off.
Okay. Quick bio. Yeah, Elizabeth Santos-Pate. I usually we'll get into a little bit. We're gonna segue into why I decided to hyphenate my name, but anyways, you guys, we're longtime friends and known our families for a very long time already. I'm a mom of a last year's valedictorian. She's also been a guest on the show, Ariana Pate, and Joaquin Pate, who's a current junior at the school, and the wife of Chris Pate, who went to Kennedy with Gervasi.
Taylor
There we
Kennedy
go.
for life. Taylor Kennedy for life.
Mm-hmm.
Was he a West is Best guy too, Mike?
He wasn't a middle school. He didn't go to middle school
Oh,
in Taylor.
okay. All right.
No, he
But
he was in Detroit
yeah,
initially, and then yeah.
I think he would have been a break as a fake though, or Hoover as a loser. Who knows?
Not West is Best.
Not West is the best.
Um,
No.
Feedback and errors from last week. Again, right away, early Friday morning, the Ren Dog right away texted. He was very high on my the pit, which by the way, we're going to get into this again, hospital dramas later. But he pointed out, and Ren Dog is a TV movie genius. He told Noah Wiley, who we didn't mention ER because I mean I mentioned the librarian, of course, but according to the Ren Dog, and I'm going to go with it. He says Noah Wiley has appeared in more ER episodes than any other actor. So he says he said 15 seasons, most episodes. I'll take Rennie for his word on
Yeah, if
that.
Rendog says it, you know it's right. So
And then importantly, we came up with that great talking about and I got to give a shout out to Rennie's good buddy Nick Gagne, and Rennie calls him the Canadian boy. And we still haven't solved that yet. Rennie's going to come on the air, I think, one day maybe and share that. Who knows though? If the relations keep struggling with
yeah, I mean,
Canada, Nick Gagne he may be locked up. I don't know. Lock him up. But all
that
kidding
could
aside,
be North Korea, Canada. It's all who knows.
all joking aside, the way back on Friday, January 31st on X, more Elon Musk stuff, he sent me a DM about an article about exactly what you're talking about, males struggling. And I felt really bad. He's like, this would be a great show topic.
Yeah,
And I want to give Nick a shout out because he thought about this. He thought of this a couple months ago. And in all honesty, and Mike, we talked about this on the phone before the episode. X is probably like when you rank all my social medias, it's probably one of the lowest just because there's not as much going on over there. And so like I probably saw that DM and then out of sight, out of mind. So Nick, you did come across this article a while ago. You were on top of it. We sort of dropped the ball and let it slip, but nice job, Nick Gagne, on that.
yeah. Actually, on that topic, and again, Elizabeth, you can jump in whenever. But a student at school, Farah, who's now a listener, mentioned she disagreed as well. But well, I think she disagreed. She really didn't say, but she did say that education needs to be rethought. And she mentioned how, and this is in the book, that the way the educational system is set up now, with the way, you know, males are now, it's not conducive to their success. And that actually, the author Richard Reeves says that in the book too. So shout out to you, Farah. Again, thank you for listening. Elizabeth, I know you had thoughts on this. So before we get to any other feedback, what do you think?
So yeah, I think Pahodi alluded to that last week, where it's kind of like you're always going to have the kids that are on different pages because of the parents that actually put in the work versus the, give your kid the iPad kind of thing.
Sure.
I thoroughly enjoyed reading to the kids. Big Dr. Seuss fan. My boxer that you love, Sam, is her real name is Sam I Am, because I've always been big Dr. Seuss fan. Read to the kids when they were like in their little infant carrier, where people would have been like, why are you reading to that kid? They don't, but I just enjoyed it. And then, we've always invested a lot into education. I was telling earlier, Joaquin and Nate were in a little play group before I think even preschool was going on, or simultaneous with preschool at the time. So it's really, unfortunately, a lot of has to do with the parents and how much you invest in these kids, because sure, you can, say, okay, well, boys are going to start later than girls in school, but you're still going to have the kids that the parents just kind of gave them an iPad and
Yeah.
didn't invest much.
For me personally, I'm in the boat of like any rethought of educational thought, for lack of a better word at that point, I'm interested in. And if nothing else, because of the simple fact, there's very few things that we're doing. I know there's new technologies and stuff like that, but in a lot of ways, we're still essentially doing the same thing we've done our generation, our parents' generation. Very few things are still done that way. So when I hear something different, it just intrigues me. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying it's a right or wrong answer. I do think it's interesting. He does make a great case for it in the book. I'd love to know what Nick Gagne's feelings are on it. I know he presented it to you, Mike, but and again, full disclosure, I didn't know you didn't tell me that until today, and for obvious reasons, out of sight, out of mind at the point, but. It's just interesting to me, and so that's all it is. I do think a lot of things need to be rethought. Whether that means we redo things or not, I don't know. But the inertia of education and the fact that we've done this way for so long, you just think about, 15 years ago, whatever it was, when Common Core was a thing. People reacted with absolute hostility, and part of it was political in nature. When both sides came up, because originally it was a Republican plan, then it was Obama's plan, and part of it was political, I'm sure. But even still, the reaction to that, the hostility to it, just shows you, any new idea is generally going to be scoffed at. Not saying, Elizabeth, you're doing that, but because
Mm-hmm.
you're looking at it more on an individual basis. But
Sure.
it's a long-winded way of me saying I'm just interested in new ideas.
Oh, for sure.
So
Gary Bailey had lots of input. First of all, it was Jay Billis that was the one about complaining about the two halves of basketball, which, by the way, Max wants the quarters, right? That was what
yes,
he
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 does.
came he does one. And I just thought it's funny. We were talking about the review. Like the last minute 14 of the Michigan Wisconsin game took like about
Yeah.
15 minutes, I think they said, of real time.
Yeah, and Max did mention that. I was going to address that. I still am for the replays, but they need man. It's hard to agree with it after that Michigan Wisconsin game because it was such a good game to me, and that end of the game, man, just sort of ruined it. You
Yeah.
know. So
And
I'm
then
with.
Gary Bailey had a very in when I mentioned the colonoscopy, which by the way, our former nurse guest, Danielle Albach, said, get your colonoscopies, obviously. They're not that bad. The prep's, not that bad. And Gary Bailey gave his whole menu of, of what, and again, back to what I said, I wanted the least amount of, I didn't need broth or just let me have the drink and let get it. I don't want anything extra that has to go in because it's
We could
not
all
staying in
lose
here.
a we could all lose a few pounds with some
Yes,
prep.
I had the one Jello in the morning is fine. It was totally good. So, but no, but we appreciate he gave a full menu and he also did say always be kind to your nurses. So, shout out Gary Bailey. You got anything else, Mike?
Quite a bit. So Max mentioned, get rid of the replays. We talked about that. Quarters all day. Love that mid majors get their moment in the sun, and he loves and basketball people. One shining moment is it's a song basketball people know by heart. It's an amazing song. At the end of the tournament, they play it. For those of you who don't know, it's well worth it. You could go on YouTube right now and just YouTube One Shining Moment 2000. I'm just throwing a year out, 2017. It's always so cool to watch that. Every year I'm getting old now, so I DVR the game unless, of course, my team is playing. So I'll DVR the game, and I look forward to watching that. Gary Bailey also brought up John Feinstein, rest in peace. Wrote, is a lot of famous books. To me, it was Season on the Brink about the Indiana Hoosiers from 1986. Summer Indiana, four time zones. It goes a lot of different directions here. Some school districts offer the Young Five option with parent-school agreement. We're obviously familiar with that. Kent Sikora. Any other fugitive on the run today is caught inside of 30 minutes. Dr. Richard Kimball with skill escape while holding down a job. Um, Kent likes the idea of starting boys later, so he's in agreement with that. Tom Pack. Nurses are top tier. Also cinnamon milk, and he sent us a
A pitcher, yeah. Cinnamon
picture.
Toast Crunch milk, yeah.
Yeah.
Better than the chocolate milk, I agree.
Better than chocolate
Yeah.
milk. Max is with me, and he's normally not, but is right about asking about people complaining about brackets being busted as dumb. I just tell people I have a perfect bracket for the first 2 weeks, which is probably a good way around that. I think, and Ren Dog and Max both got on me. My little jinx of the Pistons. Right after I said that, they lost to the lowly Washington Wizards, and then had a very controversial end with the Oklahoma City Thunder, with some
Kiss of death.
official. Yeah, so. Okay, but
Hey,
they won.
Mike,
Oh, go
question
ahead.
for you with how you feel about reffing all the time. What do you think about how that game ended and the chanting towards the refs and all that stuff?
I think the chant sucks, so I would say fans, you suck in that moment. I think it was a situation where the referee was in the wrong, but
Hmm.
Cade overreacted to it in a way. The game before, the game that they won, Cade shot 21 free throws. Okay, there's a lot of games where teams don't shoot that at all. So you can't blame the refs for every game this year. And look, if you, as an NBA fan, it's the game is officiated to benefit superstars. It's the way it's always been. I think that has to be accepted. So the ref was wrong. Cade let him know he was wrong. Got the first tech. Now you got to stop, and he didn't. And so I think this is a situation where everybody is wrong. And Elizabeth, they're playing the number one team in the NBA. You, as the best player, cannot get yourself thrown out of a game because
Oh, I agree. I told you what game was going to the game, and I said I think he cost the team the game, but
yeah, like let it
ultimately,
go. The ref messed
yeah.
it up, and he knew it. Well, he didn't know it because he had the teams line up as if it was a flagrant foul, which it wasn't. Let it go at that point.
Yeah.
If you're Cade, you said your piece. But again, the ref screwed it up from the start. I think a lot of times, I think the Bickerstaff's rant was somewhat warranted. I think it's going to make people want to play here, so I'm fine with it. But again, your best player can't get thrown out of the game, and that's
Mhm.
that's that's the bottom line. So yeah.
All right. Well, moving right along, it's time for our stock questions to sort of, oh no, Mike of the Week.
Oh yeah.
Mike,
Elizabeth, do
Mike
you
of the
have a
week.
do
I
you
did
have a
my
Mike of the Week?
homework. I did my homework, and it covers Kent Sakura and then love for baseball because I picked a
Oh
baseball
no.
player. So I went and found myself a Cuban Mike. Uh, so Mike Lowell, and hang on, I printed it out here so I don't mess anything up. Mike Lowell apparently is of Cuban parents, born in Puerto Rico. I guess his father was in the military. So he is Cuban, born in Puerto Rico. Started off with the Yankees, so go Yankees. And then went over to the Florida Marlins, won the World Series with them in 2003, and then won the World Series with the Red Sox in 2007, at which point he was named the MVP of the World
Oh
Series.
wow.
And I guess now he's like an MLB analyst. So Mike Lowell
There we
doesn't
go.
sound like a Cuban guy by the last name, but he sure is.
Man,
It
a guy that. Go ahead, Mike.
No, well, Kent texted us this morning. Kent Max, Major League Baseball kicked off its season today. I know this is going to shock everyone. The Dodgers won. First game of the season. Shocking breaking news here.
Uh, Meanwhile, the Tigers are trotting the guy out to try to learn how to play right field a week before the season starts. Like, what could go wrong? Um,
Uh,
but a guy that played for both the Yankees and Red Sox, man, that's a tough one. Gosh, I don't know. Wait,
Well, yeah, you know how I feel about
I
that.
know,
Yeah.
I know, I know.
Good call though. Good call. We'll take it. We'll take it. You're right. It's not the most Cuban sounding name, but we're all right.
No, but apparently it's because of the ancestry and all that. There's like some kind of Irish and Spanish ancestry and all that
Well,
kind of stuff.
that's
But
what
yeah,
we like. That we
Cuban
like that.
parents. So
There we
yeah,
go. All right. Our questions, our stock questions that we ask of every guest. I'm sure you've heard these. You listen to many episodes.
yep.
It is your birthday. You can have any meal out to eat, home cooked. What is that meal going to be for you?
This kind of puts my family under pressure because my birthday's a week from today.
Oh my goodness, this is
Hmm.
another close one.
Yeah. So honestly, I think we go out to eat quite a bit. So that's not much of a nuance, but anything where I'm spending time with my kids and husband. And honestly, the husband is a pretty decent cook. So, maybe hint, hint, he'll make a nice steak and some garlic mashed potatoes or something
Oh,
like
there we
that,
go.
because that's probably what I'd be getting at a restaurant anyways. A recent guest, I think it might have been Adriana, mentioned that sexy steak, and that's on my bucket list in downtown Detroit. We're always looking for good restaurants to head out that way. And a friend of mine just went and she loved it. So, and apparently like 18 of the Lions players were taken there by one of the
Oh,
Lions. Like,
the rookie meal, I think.
yeah, that was the rookie meal. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to trying that out, but no intention of going for my birthday. But yeah, the husband's a pretty decent cook. So if he wants to kind of make something for my birthday, that'd be great.
There you go. Hint, hint.
All right.
Yeah.
So Elizabeth, who you could eat with one person. I'm sure it's not Chris cracking wisecracks. So it's who's your person?
So I think you'll enjoy this one because you're a history buff and we've talked about this before. So my grandfather on my dad's side was one of the exiles trained by the CIA to go to the Bay of Pigs. And I never met him because he died when my dad was still in his teens. And so I have a lot of questions that I would have loved to have answers to.
Sure.
His name's listed, when you look up the CIA paperwork and all that kind of stuff, and like the name of the brigade that they were in and all that good stuff. But just kind of like, how, so many questions that I would, this is someone that I would love to like sit down and have a conversation with.
Okay.
Nice one. All right. Excellent.
All right. So let's uh let's just go in right into it now. Elizabeth, I this was one that was a long time coming. And you know,
Sure, sure. No pressure from me at all.
no pressure. No, I mean you said one thing, but this was planned, and we kind of did this. When we had Max on, there's people that you could kind of always have. So like when I ran into
So
Adriana, I'm like,
I'm the reliable plan B.
no, it's not a plan B. It's just the fact that okay, I'm not gonna dig myself any further. I ran into Adriana. I'm like, this is immediate. I just know I talk to you all the time. So all
You
right.
know I love messing with you.
I know you do. All right, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and obviously that'll lead into why we're having you on and all that stuff. So go
Okay,
ahead.
so let's take it back all the way to Jersey. So I grew up in Jersey. Um, my parents came to the United States as teens, met in Jersey. They did not know each other in Cuba. There's big migration to New Jersey as well as Miami. Obviously, Miami being the one that's well known. Back in the 1960s, when Castro and the communist government took over Cuba, and my grandfather had a dry cleaner in Cuba, and basically he was told like, "This is no longer yours." So they took off to Jersey, and some of the family went to Miami, some of the family went to Cuba. That being said, I'm a Jersey girl. So I was gonna actually, if we were to go with the whole New York underrated, overrated, I was actually gonna say New Jersey is the underrated because you get the best view of New York from where I am from in New Jersey, which I was born in a town called Weehawken, which history buffs and Hamilton buffs will recognize it as the area where Hamilton and Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr fought their duel, and
Hmm.
right there in Weehawken. So that is the town I'm from. So I lived in Jersey until I was 16, and my parents got divorced. Me and my mom ended up moving to Miami, and I ended up going to Miami Coral Park Senior High School for the last 2 years of high school, where Pitbull graduated from. Another plug for you there.
There you go. Nice.
And obviously, he is way younger than me. So he was there after me. And actually, Jose Canseco went to that school too,
Oh,
because
wow.
I'm sure that maybe it's been removed since because of all his problems and stuff. But the school is actually on a street called Jose Canseco Way.
Oh my
Uh,
goodness.
but anyways, so that kind of segues into the whole career college thing. I am a first generation college kid, right? My parents did not, it was understood that I was going to go to college, but I kind of figured out everything on my own, financial aid, everything by myself. And I wanted to major in psychology. And these days I would tell any kid that wants to major in psychology, tell me what you plan to do with that, because it's a wonderful degree. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn a lot about people and how to deal with people, and all sorts of very interesting things, but it has to be the basis for something else. So if you're not intending on getting your PhD in psychology and being, a doctorate in psychology, or at least, go for your master's and maybe get a master's in counseling or something, please, I really discourage the psych degree as a bachelor's program. But anyway, so I go to Florida National University for my first year of college, and it was a commuter school, kind of like Eastern, but again, being a first generation kid going to college, and I didn't really have that, you know, kind of parental, like, how's it going in school kind of stuff or whatever. It's very enticing to go to the beach in Miami and just kind of goof off, right? And like, I mean, people honestly go to school with their bikini top under their t-shirt to class, and then you're in the parking. Many times did I actually park in the parking lot and say, "Yeah, it's 85 degrees outside. I think I'm going to the beach instead and not go to class."
Yeah,
Wow.
So
that didn't happen at Eastern and
no,
Ypsilanti.
no. So there was a lot of goofing off and learning on my own that, I had to change my ways. And so my mom gets remarried. She ends up moving to Michigan. I have a boyfriend at the time down there. You know, 19-year-old girl, I'm not following you to Michigan. Why would I move to Michigan? Blah, blah, blah. And eventually things go south with that boyfriend, and I follow my mom to Michigan. I transfer over to Wayne State, still pursuing my bachelor's in psychology. And I go to apply at Oakwood Heritage Hospital, which is now Corwell, and Taylor. So that's my tie to Taylor, is Oakwood
There you
Heritage
go.
Hospital. And I apply just as a receptionist because I need, I want a job while I'm going to school. And I'm getting interviewed by HR, and the person interviewing me says, "Well, hey, you're going for your bachelor's in psychology. Have you ever thought about working in our inpatient psych unit?" And so I didn't know that was a thing. And she asked me if I wanted a tour. I go ahead and I get a tour, and hired me on the spot to work as a behavioral tech, basically a nursing aide, right, for this inpatient psych unit, which the inpatient psych unit at Oakwood Heritage was pretty intense, kind of like a lockdown, very similar to being in a jail type of atmosphere. And the population was pretty intense. And then this guy that was also getting a bachelor's in psychology, I guess, had a similar situation happen to him, applying for like a janitorial type of position or something, looking to get a job while in school. And I guess fate had it to where he got hired for that psych unit as well, and that was Chris. And
Wow.
so the inside joke is we met in the psych ward, because so when people say, "Where did you guys meet each other?" It's, well, we met in the psych ward, and kind of leave it like that for a second and let them kind of go, "Oh, I don't know where do we go from here?" And then we say we were working there. So we were both behavioral tech workers in the psych unit. And time passes, we graduate, we move on to different jobs that were like, okay, what kind of job can I get with a psych degree? I end up working as a social worker in the nursing home under the license of the master's in social work prepared social worker there. And then I also transferred to Oakwood Dearborn, and I'm working as the Spanish interpreter for the whole building, which kept me busy, but that's not what I went to school for, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I could have done that without, I'm very fluent in Spanish, so I could have done that without the degree. So Chris gets frustrated and he says, well, I'm going back to school for nursing because this ain't cutting it. I can't get a job in this field. And I'm going to say it for him. I'm a lot more stubborn than him and a lot more proud, or whatever you want to call it. And I said, well, I'm not going to do that. You can do that if you want to. I'm not going to go get an associate's degree after I just got a bachelor's degree. I'm going to go get a master's degree. So I get my master's degree in health administration at Eastern. And I think that's something I want to do. Um, you know, run stuff in the hospital. I've been in the hospital atmosphere now forever as the behavioral tech, and then working as a Spanish interpreter. Um, like Danielle said in the recent episode, if you would have told me nursing, I would have said no, blood and guts are not my thing. I never would have envisioned myself actually in nursing. So anyhow, I get my master's. I'm actually uh, defending my master's thesis while I'm pretty much about to give birth to Ariana. And then I have this baby, and I'm like, I don't want anything to do with hospital administration. I don't want to, I don't want to, I don't want to have a job that controls my life that way, where I'm gonna have to like live by a pager and just, you know, be just controlled and run stuff like this. I don't want anything to do with it. So then by then Chris already is in nursing and he's doing well. And I'm like, dang it. Okay, you win. You're right. I should have done it. Yeah, it's probably one of the few times that I've actually said, yeah, you were right. So I go back to school for nursing and I end up actually going to Henry Ford. Just so, like I said, a lot of the story is going to be like Danielle's. I go to Henry Ford and I get my associates in nursing. And I come straight out of school. And so Chris went straight out of school and went straight into the ICU. Mike, you've had him in your class doing all the presentations for the kids. And his stuff is the high adrenaline, critical care type of stuff. So I think I want the same things like that. And I end up going straight from nursing school into the neonatal intensive care unit over at
Yeah.
Oakwood Dearborn. And I soon find out I don't want to do this either because again, and so many things depend on the kind of training that a hospital is willing to give you. One too many times, and this is going to sound, bad, but I've never had a child pass away on me or anything, but one too many times, you're a rookie nurse that should have better training, and you're basically handed over a baby that's half, that just got delivered, and you're in the neonatal intensive care unit. This baby weighs like maybe a pound, and you're supposed to, make sure you're keeping it alive. And you're like, well, where's the nurse practitioner? It's supposed to be like here with me. I'm by myself on the midnight shift. And I said, no, this is not the environment that I want to be. They're not giving me the training that I need for this kind of thing. So I tell Chris, I'm like, I'm quitting. I'm not doing this, and I'm going to look for the type of nursing. So we were talking about earlier, all the type. So with nursing, once you pass that license exam, it's an endless possibilities. You can even go to nursing informatics, which is basically, I'm sure you probably have your app with my chart and you get your results on. Those are nurses that are, controlling all that tech stuff. So you can come straight out of school and maybe not touch patient care. You can go straight into working in the tech aspect of nursing or what have you. So anyhow, I say, you know what? Back to Old Faithful. My degree was in psychology. The field of psychiatry has always interested me. So then I apply at U of M in their psych unit as a nurse now. So you kind of get in there by applying for those temp spots, and then eventually a temp spot you're probably guaranteed to get an opening spot as soon as something comes up, right? So I applied for a temp spot, got that right away, and soon enough, a lot of the patients in that unit will go down to and this is where I find that my field is a little controversial. I'm usually very picky about. I end up telling people oftentimes when they say, "What do I do?" It depends how much of a conversation I actually want to have. I might just leave it as I work in a procedural area, which I do, or I can get a little more in depth and say what my procedural area is. So a lot of the inpatients from the inpatient psych unit at U of M will go down for ECT treatments, better known as electroconvulsive therapy. And one flew over the cuckoo's nest is not what you're looking at. So movies and television have done a great disgrace and disservice to the treatment modality, because we think of seeing Jack Nicholson just flailing and having a seizure and all that kind of stuff, and the nursing students always come through our department. In fact, Ariana will be coming through our department, even though I've already had her shadow there. And we always have to tell the nursing students, you're coming basically to like kind of see nothing. This is the most uneventful procedure you're going to see, because this procedure is done under general anesthesia. And the most you're going to see out of a seizure is on the EEG. So on the actual, strip of paper where they're going to see the waveform of a seizure happening, and maybe a wiggle of a toe, because the way that, muscle relaxants are done and all that kind of stuff. But anyways, so I get wooed into going down to electroconvulsive therapy area, and I start temping there, and eventually something came up there on a regular basis, and I took that job, and I have not looked back ever since, and I won't, because I love it. We do so much for our patients. Many of our patients are regulars, so we're a very well-fed department, because since our patients are regulars and love us so much, we're constantly being brought all kinds of bagels and cookies and all kinds of good stuff. But we keep moving. It's kind of like where we're talking about education. We're moving away from just electroconvulsive therapy to interventional psychiatry, because we're doing many more different things. We are, in the past few years, we've been doing ketamine infusions, not like the kind of stuff that who am I thinking of? The Friends actor,
Matt Perry.
Matthew Perry. Yes, he was getting ketamine infusions, but then he also had some sidebar, jerk doctor that was giving him all kinds of extracurriculars. So we do very controlled ketamine infusions for treatment-resistant depression. The electroconvulsive therapy is also for treatment-resistant depression. And I think what we do best with the electroconvulsive therapy is a lot of the autistic kids that we have, that those are the ones that will come, for years. I mean, I've known people for 8 years already that I've been treating, and it helps a lot. It's kind of like a reset for the brain, in terms of, to put it in the most simplified forms. Helps a lot with catatonia, which a lot of autistic kids might end up getting, which is like a freezing, and which could lead to behavioral issues, fighting, violence with the parents, and so on. So we do so much, and we're actually going to start doing intranasal ketamine, which is going to be like a almost like a Flonase type of thing, if you will. Like the patient will insert it in each nostril themselves, give themselves the spray, and then we observe them for some time. So that's a long, drawn out way of kind of telling you how I ended up where I ended up. But I currently love what I do. And if that's the beauty of being a nurse, if and when you don't like what you're doing, you can, pop open the postings and say, hey, maybe I want to go try out oncology, or maybe I want to go try out whatever, dermatology, Botox. It's kind of limitless right now, honestly.
So when that does happen, and obviously like you mentioned, you have your degree. For the most part, they'll take. I mean, obviously, there's probably like levels of positions, I guess, sometimes, but
Yeah,
they're if you you know they'll take you, like in where whichever if you like you said you mentioned oncology or that sort of
yeah,
thing. If you put in for that position and they hold an interview or whatever, your degree you're certified for that, and but you may be having to relearn some stuff that are obviously unique to that situation, right?
absolutely. And networking is key, right? I mean, in everything, you network your way right into this. So you kind of figure out, okay, let me find out who can I reach out to in oncology, if that's what you're
Yeah.
interested in moving on to, and kind of like wiggle your way into there. I'm at a point where I probably will not leave psychiatry. I've already furthered my I got like further psych certification, so I'm like officially a psych certified nurse. So I don't see myself leaving the area, unless RFK gets rid of stuff. But you know
So let me just ask you this, because and Chris said the same thing in my class regarding the psychology undergrad degree. I just want to touch upon that for a second.
yeah,
Um, Even though in terms of practicality, it's unless you're going on to become a doctor, it
right,
doesn't sound like it's too helpful to you personally. In your personal situation, though, it does sound like it
yes,
guided you later, right? Okay.
yes. In my personal, and I will say, honestly, and I think Chris says this himself too. I mean, the best teaching I think I've ever received hands on is working in an inpatient psych unit. I mean, I've had every bodily fluid known to man probably tossed at me. I mean, explicitly. So, yeah, I see the face.
Silence of the
Yeah.
Lambs. Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah,
Famous.
exactly, exactly. So it's like you know, there's I've we've been in physical altercations with people. I've had somebody like, grab me by the ponytail and not want to let go and have to ask for help. I mean, it taught me so much on how to deal with people. And now I love what I do just because it kind of mixes the best of both worlds for me, because I get to have the psychiatric patient. um these are willing patients, not like patients that are in a lockdown unit for the most part. Because even the ones that are in a lockdown unit, they still have to agree to ECT treatment if they're coming down there. And a lot of patients in a lockdown unit are there voluntarily, so it's not like everybody's there against their will. But it blends the best of both worlds for me, because at the same time then I am also in a procedural area, so I do get to start IVs. I do get to recover a patient that's undergone a treatment, not much different than your colonoscopy.
Hmm.
So just like how you came in for the colonoscopy, the difference between me and that nurse would be that we also have a nurse who would have done a psychiatric assessment for that person and asked a lot of questions to see how they're doing and how they're improving in terms of their depression scales and anxiety and all that kind of stuff. And then so I've I've made it so that I can work all areas of my department. Lately, I've been in charge a lot, and that's taken me away from the floor. But I can work, I can be that outpatient nurse that's doing the assessment on the patient that comes in. I can also be in pre-op and start the IV and give the procedure meds that somebody might need. And then I can also be recovering them in the recovery area once they're done with the procedure. Or if we're doing ketamine, we actually do it all. We do the assessment and then we do the infusion itself and all that. So I love this area because it allows me to be in the very medical piece of it all as well.
Okay.
I think what we learned from this, and even from Danielle too, and more so even today, is that it's a field that opens a lot of opportunities of different workplaces, depending on
Mhm.
what I ran in, I ran into ex students at the ER at South Shore, and they
Mhm.
that's what they want. That they like the randomness and
Yep.
sometimes craziness, and like and then like you mentioned, Chris, with the ICU,
Oh yeah.
it's a totally different world. And let's face it, usually the ICU, it's tends to be a little less. It's more going to be bad news up there than other places. You know what I mean? And
Right.
so you got to have that personality. My cousin in Virginia is a preemie nurse, like you like,
Yep.
and that's what she's done
Like
her
what I ran
entire
from.
yeah, what
Yeah.
she's done her entire career, and that's what she loves, and she tells
Yeah.
the stories she would tell me. I'm like, I don't know how you could do that,
Yeah.
like, but how any of them, and then like you said, you texted me today. There were nurses today working the blood drive for the Red
Yep.
Cross. They
Yep.
come in every day. They just go to a different place and pull pints from people. I mean, that's what they're
Absolutely.
doing. And if you want to try something different, you can. So I think like I think it's important for our students that are thinking of that as a field to realize it's not a single type of thing. And if variety is your type of thing, or
Not
and
at
again,
all.
and it's definitely one where you want to shadow, because I think, like you said, like you had Ariana shadow, because there's so many different aspects to it.
Shadowing is extremely important, and I think it's kind of like you guys have mentioned this with the student teaching too. Um, like student teaching is pretty much what done at the tail end of
Yeah.
you're damn near ready to graduate.
Yes.
And the same thing happens with clinicals. Nursing students, nursing programs, for the most part, these students aren't going to hit clinicals until they're juniors. Wouldn't you want to know ahead of time if
Yes.
you are like gonna pass out if you see blood? I mean, we've had people go and the nursing students that come to us, they're in their junior year. We're in pre-op starting an IV, and I'm like, okay, you need a chair. You look like you're about to pass out. So not that you can't continue being a nurse after that, because Gervasi knows I myself am squeamish about getting an IV myself. I'll poke people till the cows come home, but come at me with a needle and I feel a certain kind of way. So,
Yeah,
that's
and I've had, as you mentioned, I've had Chris in my room, and we're getting more and more um students listening to the show. So I just want to say to them, it doesn't have to be you, obviously, Elizabeth, and I don't want to volunteer something for you, but Chris has said, they can contact him, and I'm not just talking about your field, I mean in general, but when Chris does his presentation, a lot of the kids, I think it's going over their head at this point. They're still kind of young. 10th and 11th grade is still a little early, but a lot of kids really at that point want to learn about it. So in
right.
any field, but I'm speaking directly to you right now, talk to people that are in the field, find out what they're saying about it, because
Yep.
these are super impactful
And I
decisions.
would be more than happy to have conversations with students about like psych nursing. Unfortunately, shadowing in my area,
Of course,
because
of
of the
course, of course.
privacy, um, you know, suicidality, depression,
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
anxiety, it has all that, um, where there's so much privacy issues, where some of these people's families may not even know they're getting treatment.
Yeah.
It's so private in my area, that it becomes difficult to shadow. Ariana, obviously, because she's my kid. But and that, I got special permission and all that, and she knows my medical director from beforehand, anyways, just sitting next to him at a football game. But it's definitely very difficult to shadow. But I'd be more than happy to have a conversation because psych is obviously the underrated of nursing. Honestly,
Mhm.
There you go.
it's definitely overlooked because we don't talk about that kind of stuff, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's the stigma behind mental health.
We might we might have to have a panel of our nurses on an episode and do overrated, underrated nursing.
Yeah, overrated. I swear. I think psych nursing probably wins in the underrated, because it's the type of stuff that nobody wants to talk about.
Well, great segue. And you sort of hinted at this too when you mentioned like movies and film, because we are doing overrated, underrated this week, hospital slash medical dramas, TV or film, either way,
Yep.
any way you want it. So, Mike, I'm going to start with you. We'll start with you. What is your overrated medical drama?
Mike, you're gonna hate me because I'm stealing your thunder, I think, because we've
All
talked
right.
about this in the past.
Yeah.
So I'll let you rant on this one. I'm gonna say Grey's Anatomy though.
Yeah, and I'll join you right now. And because and in all honesty, my watching it is Elisa is a TV watcher in bed, like at night. Like I'll go to sleep, but she'll have it on, and I'll like be asleep, and I will, when some of these cases that were so outrageous, they like I hear it. She's like, "Oh, now you're watching." I go, "I'm watching because this is outrageous and ridiculous." I think like there's one where like this guy was like enthralled in concrete or something. I don't even like these things that like, and I'm sure there's always these exceptions. And I still remember one time years ago, I went to the ER when my father-in-law was at South Shore. I mean, it was Seaway at the time, and he was the ultrasound tech there for years. And I don't know if it was when we brought Nate. I don't know what it was. We brought somebody in, and I'm sitting there and I'm talking, and I go, man, I go, because you watch TV, right, and everything's all watching ER, and it's like, da, da, da. And it was like, I go, man, there's not much going on around here, and he's like, that's the kiss of death. And then sure enough,
Yeah.
they start
Oh God, don't ever say the quiet
and
word.
sure enough, and within 3 minutes they start calling a code, and he's like, you
Yep.
son of a,
Yeah,
Yep.
man.
and
Absolutely.
but like to me, that's like what those TV shows are.
Spoons and the
But in
quiet
reality,
word are the kiss of death.
when you walked into the ER, it was like, when I took Nate the last time his knee was popped out, it was a little crazy, but it wasn't like ER. So like the cases that come into, I mean, come on, like the one time, right, the guy got hit by the bus and they didn't realize who it was, and then they bring him. Okay, so plane
Double O
crashes.
seven.
Yeah, yeah, there we go. All right,
Mike, you didn't even give me a
we've
chance to
offended.
explain my. You
Go
didn't
ahead.
even
I'm
let me.
sorry. We've
So-
offended. We probably offended the whole female audience.
Go ahead,
No,
Elizabeth.
here, Mike, I'm gonna actually agree with you. Honestly, and Chris probably gonna hate me for saying this, but we were guilty of just watching Grey's Anatomy religiously for so long. But honestly, for the soap opera aspect of it all, not because it's a good medical show, because you're absolutely right. How many, and it's not just the wacky stuff that they show, but how many tragedies can happen in one place in a
So
given week.
yes,
And I think what we really like just grinds us about Grey's Anatomy, again, love the show, one of my favorite shows actually, that I just stopped watching in the last couple of years because it just kind of didn't do it for me with as the cast has changed throughout the years, but for so long I watched it. But one of the things, you never see a nurse on that show. It's a rare occasion when you see a nurse on that show. All that the doctors do everything on that show. The doctor will perform the surgery and then come to the room and then walk the patient, and give me a break. That doesn't happen. Where's the where the surgeons do it all at Grey's Anatomy. They're
yeah,
just so,
yeah.
the surgeons are phenomenal at Grey's Anatomy. They do it all. They don't need any other staff there. There's no PT, OT, no dietitian, no anything to. So yes, Grey's Anatomy. And probably another one that's like really far-fetched, and it hasn't been talked about in a long time, is Dr. House. And I used to watch it too because like they talk about some intriguing things and diagnoses and stuff, but really you have this one doctor that comes in and he's just gonna get the whiteboard out and trying to figure out this weird anomaly that someone has every single day of his job. So yeah,
There
I
we go.
agree.
All right, well, you
Grey's
got two in there. All right, Mike,
Yeah.
we're all the way back to you already. Underrated. What's your underrated? I won't
So
stomp all over you.
I was stuck between three. I'm gonna plug two movies actually. One from the '90s, Patch Adams. I love the movie. Um, but I don't know how underrated it is because I think it did really well. So my underrated movie, and then I'm just gonna plug a new television show. But my underrated movie is John Q. It's more just it's a commentary on the healthcare system in general, and it's set in a hospital, which is why. But I looked it up on Rotten Tomatoes. They do the top. I don't know why they chose this number. 49 movies of Denzel Washington.
Yes.
That's number 48.
Oh wow.
What's 49?
A movie I hadn't heard of, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Hold on, if you give me. But anyway, yeah, I can't tell you. It'll take me too long to find. But yeah, 48. I mean, that is a really cool movie.
What's the
His
what's the
acting,
movie? What's the movie where he was paralyzed and
where
he's the
Denzel
cop?
Washington was,
Yeah, don't you know what I'm talking about? Bone. I forget what it's
oh,
called.
Bone Collector. Is it Bone
Bone
Collector?
Collector. Is that what it was called? He was like a cop. He got the opening scene. He gets crushed and he's like a paraplegic, and he solves the
I
case
think
with Angelina
is
Jolie.
Denzel and Bone Collector. Did we have the wrong black guy? I could say that I'm a minority.
I think that's
Um,
Denzel Washington.
If you give me
I'm
a
almost
second.
positive.
Anyway, let me
Look
just
it up,
plug
look it
another
up.
show while we're
I stole your
looking it
thing
up.
again. Go ahead.
Yeah. But there's a new show that's set. It's called Doc, and the premise of the show, the acting at times.
I'm binging it too.
Are you okay? So,
Yeah.
but the premise of the show is pretty cool. She gets into a car accident. She seems like, she suffered an unspeakable tragedy with her son, losing her son. She became really mean. And anyway, she has a car accident in the present, and it makes her forget the last 7 years of her life. So it's a pretty interesting show. It's a pretty interesting storyline. I haven't decided yet how much I like it, but I'm just kind of plugging the show. My underrated is definitely John Q, but I plugged a couple other things as well. And Bone Collector was Denzel Washington. And Mike,
Angelina
if you're
Jolie.
If you're
I'm,
scoring at home, number 47 on the Denzel
I see. I
Washington
liked
movie,
Bone Collector. I thought it was good.
just ahead of John Q. The number 49 one, the
Well,
last.
he has so many good movies. There,
Yeah, but come on, man. John Q was really good. His acting,
John
and
Q is excellent. I agree.
there was other
Yes.
big names in that. Robert Duvall, James Wood, and H. Like there was some big,
Yeah.
the one comedian. Oh God. Anyway, heart conditions number 49. Elizabeth, go ahead.
Queen
Okay.
Latifah was in Bone
So
Collector, by the way. I'm just pointing that out.
there you go. So I am binging Doc, but again, because it's kind of soap opera, I like the little storyline behind it, but I think it is a little far fetched because she did have this accident and now she actually has to take her boards again and basically, get permission to like really practice as a doctor again. But it's got a good little storyline and it's entertaining enough. And if you're trying to binge something, it makes for entertaining enough show.
Sure.
Um, Underrated. I again, I really do like your John Q. That's a good one. I'm gonna say Scrubs, the TV show Scrubs,
Okay.
and I'll tell you why. Because in Scrubs, they show janitor, they show the ward clerk, they show nurses, they show the residents, they show the attendings, they show all kinds of stuff, and it's a comedy, but it really shows the dark, jaded sense of humor that medical staff have. And we have to have it. And it may be, some people might look at that and, it might come off as crass, insensitive. We need that as a coping skill because we see a lot of bad things. And, like Chris in critical care sees nothing but, I mean, it's, outcomes are usually not good in critical care, right? In psych, we could see a lot of bad things. I hear a lot of bad stories at least, and hope that I can make good outcomes out of them. But there's a lot of darkness that we have and that we bring home with us and all that. And so our interactions are pretty, usually nurses and docs are pretty foul mouthed. Um, but I think Scrubs does a great job of showing that like snarky, kind of sarcastic sense of humor. If you remember correctly, the main intern at the time, JD, and then he becomes an attending and what have you. He's always kind of like got this internal voice going on and is like second guessing himself and all that kind of stuff. And I just to me that's the underrated.
Okay.
All right. Little comedy, a little
Mm-hmm.
film. Of course, I mentioned The Pit last week. I'm not going to say that it's too new, and it's
Oh,
probably
on the Pit. I haven't watched it yet. I do want to watch it because I have from all my peers and I keep hearing that it is, you're right, it is apparently the most accurate that we have to date without ruining anything. I don't know how caught up you are. I have not watched it yet, but apparently they get a uh whatchamacallit, a like maternal fetal medicine type issue incorrect in
oh
a recent episode.
yeah. I
Something
didn't watch.
something about the
I was
delivering of a baby that's not as accurate as it
oh
could be,
okay.
but apparently if it was to be so accurate, and your relative with the NICU background would definitely be able to speak to that. They, if they were to get it accurate, probably you'd miss too much that's happening so quickly in the episode. But apparently that's their only goof up so far, and it's supposed to be a
Oh, so
great.
there's people watching, and like you mentioned, there's many different levels of employees that are featured, including new
Mm-hmm.
medical students, nurses, orderlies, all
Yeah.
sorts of people. So, but it's too new, it's too fresh. I just mentioned it last week, but and then ER, of course, is the thing that everyone's. And I think back to ER too. It wasn't just doctors there, nurses,
Yeah.
guys
ER
behind the
was
counter.
great. Yeah.
They were always good about that. But my underrated goes even older than ER, way back in the '80s. St. Elsewhere
I
on
knew it. I knew it. I
St.
knew
Oh
it.
my
Elsewhere,
god.
which was more. There were nurses involved, and it was like it predated Grey's Anatomy, but I don't think it
Yes.
had as goofy as cases. The medical things were pretty standard. There weren't these like ridiculous, crazy cases. You had some characters that were good, and some great. Speaking of Denzel, right? Some great
Yes.
actors that came up through that show. To me, I watched it on Peacock. because you could watch the whole series, my mom, that was like her show, so I grew as a I was probably watching it like as younger than I should have been. Not like that it's not appropriate, but like it really wasn't a show for kids. But I really liked it. Howie Mandel was a doctor on there. The cast is very unique. There were, all the way up to James Dr. Craig, the surgeon, that, and then all the way down though to like, orderlies and nurses that had to deal with stuff, a lot of soap opera stuff, but I think it's underrated and it's definitely like, back in the past. And then of course it has the very controversial ending. The controversial ending was that the director of the hospital's son was shaking a snow globe, and he was an autistic kid, and supposedly the whole show was in his head.
In
That's
the
right. I forgot about
And
that.
it's very there's a lot of anger about that episode,
very
which I mean,
anticlimactic.
yes. So that's mine. Saying else, we'd love to. I know the Ren Dog's going to have an input on this, and he's our big TV movie guy. So we'd
Yeah.
love to hear what anyone else's overrated, underrated is with that. All right, hot mic take. Elizabeth, do you have anything that you want to get off your chest today?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
gosh, I can hear my husband just saying she has a lot that she could get off her chest because she's just mad all the time. Anyhow, so now that we got that out of the way, hot mic take for me, seeing as though we said from the beginning that I was zooming in from the Tesla. The Tesla is my hot mic take because it's just a pain to have it right now. I love the car. It drives great. You know, it's hard to find competition for it that's, really equitable to it. And it just kind of sucks that it's turned into this thing now. I mean, initially it was like, oh, you're a snowflake for getting it. Now I can't even tell you what I'm getting called for, right? For having it.
You've
Not
swung
family
from one
friendly.
into the spec to the other.
Exactly. So it's like, God, Lee, can I just be a car owner and not like have to go in any which way of the spectrum? So the Tesla and everything that's going on, I wish maybe if maybe the board would decide on a new CEO or something, and then we can, get away from the politics of the car. That'd be great
The
because
shareholders may want that.
yeah, I mean, well, it keeps going lower and lower. And then, you'll have people, you'll see it on TikTok. Well, just get rid of it. Well, like it's that easy to just go and get rid of a car, especially that's,
That's
people are wanting to get rid of, right? But I like the car. We drive a lot to Ann Arbor. It allows us to, just charge it up at night and save a lot of money in gas. And I kind of like 0 to 60 in less than 3 seconds. It's kind of cool. But it just has turned into a thing. And so, yeah, that's really annoying right now.
all right. Mike.
Interesting you bring that up because I'm gonna kind of jump off that and just go into right now. And I 2 weeks ago ish, or maybe 3 weeks ago now, it's gonna be 3 weeks when this episode airs. Zelensky and Trump and Vance had a meeting in the Oval Office, and it went horribly sideways. And
Mm-hmm.
so, without going too in depth on this, by the time the night was over, just text messages with friends who were on the opposite of the aisle as me, I just concluded they saw the same thing I did. I arrived at this conclusion, they arrived at this conclusion, and there's no bridging this. Like, we are just so far apart right now. And then I was watching Friday, real time so a week ago today, real time with Bill Maher, and he had a guest on who is a Trump supporter who said she's a very big Trump supporter. She's also a leftist. She calls herself a MAGA leftist.
Oh,
And she goes in to explain why. And whether I agree with her or not, it was a unique viewpoint. I actually showed this to my AP Gov kids, and I'm sure the listener, it sounds like an oxymoron, but she did explain herself, and she brought up her reasoning, and it just made me think if this person can conceive herself as such and really bridge the gap because and again right after her a guy said well but he's done this and this which is not leftist and it became a whole semantical argument but if this person can label herself as such you know just from the change starts with the person in the mirror, right, to quote Michael Jackson. Maybe this is like if people could find themselves to be bridging these gaps on individual level, can we bridge these gaps as a society? And I'm
Hmm.
asking rhetorically, I don't know what the answer is, but I was so hopeless when I watched that. And then I just had these text message arguments with my friends. And, one of my friends and I were just talking today. Could we be the ones that are wrong? And maybe,
Yeah, we could be, sure.
right? And so just thinking about that and then thinking about the Zelensky meeting and how far apart we were, but you end up in this place with this person who, again, a MAGA leftist. What? But then she explained it, maybe we can. Maybe, I don't know. I'm hopeful because right now there's not a lot of hope out there in bridging this divide, and it's kind of frightening to be honest.
Well, Mike, we talked about this. We've talked about this in a lot of MAGA people may be shocked when we've mentioned this, that Trump is a lifelong Democrat,
Right.
and
Hmm.
his policies, even the policies he's enacting now, would have Reagan turning over in his grave.
Yeah.
Not just the Russian things, but his economic
Oh, the free
policies.
trade. Yeah.
And
Right.
and the Democrats of the '80s would
Anti-free
love
trade.
this, would love this stuff.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
terror, like, but because everything is like the car itself, people are getting stretched from left to right.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
People can see, most people can see that now. Guys like Mitch McConnell and stuff for years that were like, oh no, he's a Republican. They're probably like swallowing some of this stuff. They can't stand it, but they still accept it, I guess. So I don't know. It's just craziness because, like I said, Donald Trump politically is probably close. It was definitely closer to what our parents as UAW people or
Sure.
as union workers were than Ronald Reagan ever was.
Right.
Ever. Like they would, but that's,
But
you
there
know,
was never talk under Reagan or Bush or Obama. There was never talk like the stat some months ago was like 40% of Americans believe there's a civil war possibility in the next 10 years.
yeah.
Like that's 40% of a country of what, 350 million thinks that's a
It's a
possibility.
lot easier to say that when instead of
It is,
it's a
but
dumb question because I mean, like, come on, some of these people,
but
you
I'm
know,
but again, Mike, you're right. But that's the mindset that we're that divided that 40%
uh,
of people feel that way. Not
it's
that it's going to
sad,
happen, but it is.
sad.
If we
My
could just go
things,
back to when people could just be civil and
yes,
you'd
Yeah.
see like you
I,
see videos of like presidents like back in the day where they don't agree on their politics, but they're just cordial with each other on stage like anybody else having a debate.
I saw a lot of the clip of George W. Bush introducing
Right,
Nancy Pelosi as the first ever
Yeah.
Madam Speaker, and Dick Cheney standing. The first person to stand up and clap was Dick Cheney, which,
right.
by the way, now looking now it doesn't matter because he's
Right.
which
Right.
now makes sense, which all makes sense that Dick
Yeah.
Cheney was the first person clapping. But if you were following politics in that time, that was a shocking moment to see
Sure.
Dick Cheney stand up and clap. You know, I saw the Obama retirement video is still one of my all time favorites, where him and Boehner and the watching the movie and Boehner
Yeah.
offers him the cigarette. It's like, and you know me, I've always been a Boehner guy, but
Yeah.
wonder what he's thinking now. All right, my hot mic take. So St. Patrick's Day weekend just passed. Monday was St. Patrick's Day. Were you ever a big St. Patrick's Day guy? We talked about the wood nickel many ages ago back at Eastern, right? Like that was as I get, I'm just, and again, maybe I'm turning into get off my lawn guy or whatever. And again, we had to work. I worked actually Saturday. The thing about this year, with it being on a Monday, you could have partied. All the bars were partying on Saturday, right? Sunday was the parade, and then Monday was actually St. Patrick's Day. So you had three options of, and
Yeah.
probably Friday night too. But I think most things were Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Yeah.
I was shocked at the number of posts of people our age. I guess I'm just turning to get off my lawn guy. I didn't want anything to do with it.
No, Mike, I was in Wyandotte on
I'm
Saturday
shocked.
afternoon. Saturday afternoon, it was like I went around. There's this like cool European pastry shop, and I went around to walk over there, and right across the street is a bar, and it was like packed with people outside in line in all the green, and I'm like, God, that just looks too crowded for me. So I'm with you now.
Like I drove past the golf. I left Lake Erie Golf Course. West Chef Bar and Grill had a big old tent out, and I'm like, I just want to go home. I'm so
Yeah.
so tired. And I know, like Chloe, I'm sure up in U of M, what do they call them? Borgs now. They get like
Yeah,
these.
Borgs, yeah.
They get a gallon, like a milk gallon, or not milk, but probably distilled water. Dump it out and then fill it with adult beverages and Diet Green. That's the in thing to do.
Okay.
So you know why Mott Children's Hospital you have to be, I think, up until like the age of 25 you're seen at Mott Children's Hospital.
Why is that? Because all the Michigan students had
I
too much
figured, yeah.
Borgs.
It's because of it's like the Michigan games. They will completely crowd the adult ER, so they have to offset it. So that's why if you're like up until 25, you're going to be seen in the children's ER because it's going to be the less busy ER. So
So game
that
days
goes
are crazy, are crazy out there.
apparently.
Hmm.
That's why I don't work in that critical care area. No, thank you.
There, there you go. All right. Well, hey, Elizabeth, thank you so much. It was great to
Thank you
hear.
guys.
Like I said, it was very interesting, and and Mike, you did a great job holding up with all the medical talk today. I'm proud of you. I
We
came into
didn't
his
we
room.
didn't get into blood and guts. That's
I
a
I'm
came
a
into his room today. I had my arm wrapped. I was.
I hate that rap.
He handled it very well. I looked at my watch. It took me 5 minutes to get emptied out today, and
All right.
uh,
I said we'll close out with that because we did not talk about blood and guts. The day
yeah.
he lets me
So
put an IV in his arm, I will have won the lottery.
yeah, he's already getting plus. We don't
Yeah.
need to have Brownstown
What are
make a
we doing
run.
here? Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
gonna.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, thank you
Thank you
again,
guys.
Elizabeth. Great episode for like I said, anyone that's interested in the field. We've had two nurses on. I'm actually lining up another episode guest down the road with a student that's in her final year of nursing, and so we got that coming up too. So Mike, so we're the fans of nurses on Pass the Mic. Oh, that's
Absolutely.
the other
Right.
Definitely.
thing. I forgot that almost the fans thing. Let me wrap up with this. Someone on Downriver and Friends said, "Hey, I'm
Oh
looking
God.
for a podcast to listen to
Oh yeah.
locally."
Forgot about
This
that.
Uh-oh.
was Emma Lee Dreyer. I can't read my own handwriting. So I suggested, first of all, one of the co people said, "Hey, Downriver Jeff and I are trying to start a podcast. Well, let us know when you get that started," because I put the link to Pass the Mic, and she commented, Mac, and I want to give Max a shout out because I sent you guys the photo, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Hey, should I put Pass the Mic?" And Max said, "Do it," and he
Yeah.
wasn't pulling her legs. And the girl was like, "Hey, I'm a custodian at a local school, and this sounds really cool." So Emma, if
Okay.
you're listening,
Yeah.
welcome aboard. Um, if we ever monetize, we'll send you something. We'll let Dr. Rice find that out.
But we're not doing that right now. That's for
No, we're not. So, but
right.
Emma, welcome aboard. Anyone else that saw that post on Downriver and Friends? For a change, I wasn't making fun of Downriver and Friends. I was legitimately plugging Pass the Mic. So
Yeah.
that's all right. Everybody, have a great week. We will see you next week.
Thank you guys.
Thanks,
See
Elizabeth.
ya.